Breathing is one of those pieces of the puzzle that we kind of like to forget about. We learn once, we think it's fine, but we don't revisit it. And we don't revisit it with the goal of, how can we make this even more efficient? Am I doing something that's increasing tension in my body that I don't need to be doing? So it's a possibility that we might be debunking a few myths about breathing here. But I don't want you to do things simply because I tell you to do them. I want you to do them because you've experimented with it and it seems like it's the best option for you. So we're going to play around with a few things, and I'd love to hear your feedback in a comment below or any questions that you have. How did you go with it? The first thing that we're going to do is talk about where you're breathing into. So where are you directing the breath? And I find that there are generally two schools of thought that kind of do the rounds in terms of singing teaching. The first one is that you expand solely into the ribs. So expanding into the rib cage 360 degrees around. So you're getting that expansion into the back as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to do that. We're going to expand into the rib cage, and then I'm going to get you to hiss or control the exhale on a hiss. Keep going. Can you feel any tension in the rib cage? Can you feel those intercostal muscles between the ribs getting tight? Is there any tension in the back? Relax the breath, let it go. The second school of thought is to breathe into the stomach. So the problem with the stomach is that you actually get no expansion into the ribs, which seems strange because our lungs are in the rib cage. So it makes sense to kind of have some expansion there. But just for experiment's sake, we're going to breathe solely into the stomach. And I want you to do the same thing. Just notice if you're feeling any tension whatsoever in your torso. So breathing into the stomach, pushing it out, and so again, it sort of feels odd to have my abdominal muscles pushing that out. And because I was a rib breather for many years, that feels strange to not inflate here for me, but it might be completely different from you. If you've been breathing into your stomach your whole life, that probably feels pretty natural. But I want you to give something else a go. So breathing specialist Robin de Haas, who is based in Europe, talks about the body working as efficiently as possible when we breathe. So what we want to do is allow all the bits of the body to work as they want to. So the ribs want to come out, and the stomach actually is going to inflate, not because we push out the stomach, but because the diaphragm, this big muscle here, when we inhale, flattens on top of the digestive organs. So you do get this little expansion into there. It's not huge, but it's little. So we don't want to force it, we just want to allow it to happen. So I want you to play around with that. We're going to expand a little bit into the ribs and a little bit down. So the breath drops nice and low. So just trying that. And out. Can you get a little bit of expansion into both? And out. And then we're going to inhale and do that same controlled hiss. For me, I feel like I can control the air just as easily, but I'm not getting any tension in my torso. It feels much more relaxed for me. But you give it a go and let me know how you feel, how your body feels. The second piece of the puzzle that I want to talk about is the inhale and how we tend to gasp in air when we inhale if we've got a very quick breath that we've got to take. So the problem with getting that audible gasp, apart from the fact that it doesn't sound great, is that it actually causes some tightness in the throat. And so if you inhale and gasp, it's already tight for when you're going to sing. So we really don't want to have that audible gasp that's then tightening in the throat and sometimes even in the tongue. So instead, I want you to think about dropping the breath in really, really silently. So I'm going to get you to breathe your air out. Hold the breath, and then open the mouth and drop the breath in. As silent as possible. Trying that again, exhaling. Open. Now, often students will say, but I can't get enough in that way. When I gasp, I can drag a lot of air into my body. But my question for you now would be, how much air do you actually need? because most singers tend to overestimate the air that they need. And the problem with that is that you're having to then hold a lot of air, which is quite uncomfortable. Depending on where you're holding it, even more uncomfortable. But what we want to do is push more air out to get more comfortable in the torso. So you have this added air pressure that's coming at the vocal cords. And they don't like this. Either they're going to come apart and you're going to get this breathy tone or a crack or this any kind of horrible sound where the cords just come apart and aren't working for you. Or they're going to have to work so much harder to stay vibrating next to each other. So they're going to have to work really hard to continue to get that sound that you're after. And this is when it starts to cause fatigue on the voice. So if you're feeling like that you're getting very vocally tired after your practice sessions, this might be something that you want to investigate. So try dropping the breath in and then singing a long, difficult phrase. Can you do this and get through the whole phrase on that? Or do you find that you don't have enough air for it? If you're in that second camp, what I would do is actually start to measure what you're doing with your exhale. So how much air are you exhaling and is it consistent? We tend to push more air at notes that we find challenging or up in our head voice, which we don't want to be doing because again, it's going to burst those cords open. It's too much for them. We want it to be nice and consistent. So back in the old days, they used to have candles and singing teachers would get their students to sing in front of the candle and notice how much it was flickering to measure their exhale or that airflow, that consistent flow of air. What I'm going to get you to do instead, because I don't want it to be a fire hazard, is pop your hand in front of your mouth. So if you just breathe in and exhale onto your hand, as long as it's close enough, you should feel the heat of your breath. And it's a really good way of measuring it. So I want you to play around with an exercise where maybe you're doing, let's do an arpeggio. So if you do ah, and measure how much air you're using and is it consistent? Are you giving more on the top note or are you giving more on the first note? Maybe it's really puffing out at the beginning. So let's give that a go. Any note. You don't have to sing along with me. This is just a note that's comfortable for me. Ah, then going up a note. Ah, and up another note. Ah. Is it staying consistent or are you noticing puffs of air? If you're noticing puffs of air, I want you to do it again, but I want you to keep the airflow consistent. Ah. How does that make a difference? Can you feel a difference? Can you hear a difference? So those are a few things that I want you to start playing around with your breath. I'd love to hear your comments below if any of those were really useful, or if you completely disagree, that's fine too. But if you did find it useful, if you got something out of this, I would love for you to share this video with your singing friends and let me know your feedback. So until next time, I'll see you then.